It's been more than 6 months since an Oregon appeals court shut down the state's biggest program to fight climate change. It's called the Climate Protection Program. Well, it's now back, and last week the group charged with coming up with the rules for the program hit a big milestone. Environmental reporter Cale Williams has the story.
Stop me if you've heard this one before. Oregon is getting ready to enact an expansive set of climate regulations aimed at drastically cutting the state's greenhouse gas emissions. If that sounds familiar, it should. This is the second time the state is working to craft rules to drastically cut climate warming gases in the state. The Climate Protection Program was invalidated by an Oregon appeals court last year over a technical error. Since then, the state has been working to get it re-implemented. Nora Apter is director of programs with the Oregon Environmental Council, and she said time is of the essence.
We have unfortunately lost years due to the invalidation of the Climate Protection Program. It is vital that the CPP is restored as soon as possible.
The overarching goal of the program is to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2035 and by 90% by 2050. It'll do so by implementing a cap on emissions for certain businesses and utilities that lowers over time. Apter is one of more than 24 folks on the Rulemaking Advisory Committee, which helps the state determine how the program will work. The committee also includes representatives from environmental justice organizations, business groups, and some of the same utilities that sued to have the program invalidated in the first place. That can make for some interesting dynamics.
We are advocating for a program and hoping to maintain the integrity of this really cornerstone climate justice policy at the same time as parties in the room are fighting to weaken it.
But despite the potential for conflict, some folks said the process is actually going a little smoother the second time around. Chris McCabe is the executive director of the Northwest Pulp and Paper Association.
I think the agency has really done a good job rolling up its sleeves and listening to some of the concerns that were not, in my view, adequately addressed during the first CPP rule.
There are, of course, still some sticking points. In a statement to KGW, the region's largest gas utility, Northwest Natural, said they had concerns about the program's costs, whether it was viable, and how much it'll actually cut emissions. It's our position that if DEQ moves forward with this program, there are changes that must be made to protect Oregonians. For McCabe, the paper mills he represents are worried that complying with emissions restrictions could put their businesses at a disadvantage.
If the mills in Oregon are straddled with too many costs, they're not going to be able to produce a competitive product, whatever it is that they make.
If those businesses choose to move their operations to somewhere with weaker environmental regulations,
we're going to see a net increase in greenhouse gas emissions, and that's exactly opposite of what we would like to see.
The new rules do include some mechanisms to lighten that burden, though. Some businesses that compete with other regions will have less stringent caps, and there are credits that can be purchased called Community Climate Investments, or CCIs. The proceeds from those credits would go towards things like community solar projects and programs that provide heat pumps to low-income folks. Citlali Torres is the Air Quality and Climate Program Coordinator at Verde. She noted that people helped by those kinds of programs often suffer the worst consequences of climate change.
There's tons of reasons to be focused on making sure that investments are going to people who are hit first and worst and on the front lines of feeling these impacts.
The cost of those credits, starting around $130 per metric ton of greenhouse gas emissions, are still too high for many on the industry side. But Apter said that recent investments from the federal government will soften the financial blow as the state works to transition away from fossil fuels. And from Apter's perspective, the benefits will be well worth it.
We have seen time and time again industry painting a picture of a scary, expensive future. And that is not the reality. But what they don't want people to know is that the transition to clean energy is going to be cheaper and healthier for everyone.
After some final tweaks, the proposed rules should be released to the public in the next few weeks. That'll be followed by a public comment period, then a hearing with a vote on the rules expected by the end of the year. Cale Williams, KGW News.
Fascinating stuff. There's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding the program and its impacts. What does Northwest Natural mean by changes to protect Oregonians? Rate increases? And when it comes to those CCI costs for companies, will they fight any cost, and would those costs be passed on to you, the consumer? I don't know. It's a lot to figure out. So this is obviously a story that Kale and the team will continue to follow.